I'm going to show y'all this clip or this video that I came across on YouTube that I really found interesting. Like, it really talks about many of our ancestors had used sorcery during the so-called slavery days, which we were prisoners of war. And this video talks about how our practices that we were used were demonized and why they were demonized. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
But today, we talking about Obeah. And whether you're religious or not, there is a reason why Caribbean people are so afraid. Not only of doing it or observing it, but just talking about it. And in order to understand why, we must first understand what is Obeah. Voodoos and Obeahs, phrases of West Indian witchcraft by Joseph John Williams, defines Obeah as a system of spiritual healing and justice-making practices developed among enslaved West Africans in the West Indies. Alright, so yeah, we gotta address the elephant in the room. Right off the bat, religion has been used as a weapon just as much as it's been used for one's well-being. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Pakistan and India, and who could forget the most gruesome, the one that started it of all, the Holy War. Religion, especially organized religion, has always been fundamentally contentious, and Obeah is no different. In its definition itself, it has a mechanism that allows for the healing of one's spirit just as much as it has one for seeking justice by harming another spirit. So you may be wondering if that's the reason why Obeah is so stigmatized. Stay tuned. Obeah has become a blanket term for a litany of different religions, and it's hard to actually pin it down to one class of beliefs. However, it can be traced back to 18th century Igbo land. Now, despite scholars being able to trace it to that region in Nigeria, they can't necessarily relate it to one specific place. They got like 3 different hypotheses as to the origins of Obeah. The Akan origin, which has an association with malevolent magic from Ashanti priests. In other words, this is what we know as the witchcraft side of Obeah. And this depiction really stems from one particular event, and that is the First War of the Maroons in Jamaica. Colonial literature postulates that Nanny of the Maroons won the First Maroon War in 1739 as an old witch or a hag. This would become one of the first documented cases of Obeah being used. Also, I'd be remiss not to mention Taki's Rebellion, which essentially put a spotlight on Obeah for its usage in an uprising. And that uprising in itself led to why there's such a negative stigma around Obeah. Now, despite the Akan origins, a lot of scholars actually argue that it was Igbo culture that Obeah came from. For example, W.E. Du Bois actually traces Obeah to the doctoring practices that the Igbo people used to conduct. The future-telling aspects of Obeah that we know in the Caribbean is very similar to what the people in Obeah used to do as far as the specialists go. And another argument that supported this hypothesis is that the parts of the Caribbean where people practice Obeah were directly from the people that lived in the Bight of Bonny, which is an Igbo-dominated place. Then, of course, we have a totally different hypothesis, the Efik origin of Obeah, which basically claims that the Efik language reveals the word Obeah being linked to the Efik word Ubayo, which basically means bad omen. There's a lot of conflicting speculation in regards to the origins of Obeah, and the reason for that is actually quite simple. Colonizers was legit arbitrarily acquiring Africans, yanking them up out of wherever they was, no matter if they was in a different tribe or not, and then juking them in parts of the Caribbean and elsewhere, all across the world. So you would have people from one tribe practicing totally different religions, juk up right next to people from a totally different tribe, living in the same place. This resulted in a hodgepodge of different religions from Africa. But what we know as Obeah now was first mentioned in 17th century Barbados. A man named Thomas Waldock wrote a letter claiming that an Obeah Negro can torment another by sending uncountable pains in different parts of their body. Lameness, madness, loss of speech. And another instance involves none other than the Nanny of the Maroons. She was characterized as this bloodthirsty, unsexed, rebel Obeah woman that used to conduct Obeah for the rebels of the Maroons. There are fantastical stories of the Nanny of the Maroons using this instrument called the Nanny's pot to take out British soldiers. A boiling pot without a flame below it that soldiers would lean into and fall in to quickly grow food for starving forces. Or tales of her catching bullets from the British and then using them and sending them back to them. But it was until Taki's War that things took a troubling turn. Say that 3 times fast. Taki's War was an uprising of Akan slaves during the 1700s in the colony of Jamaica. The rebellion was led by none other than the royal warlord known as Taki. Rumor has it that Taki consulted an Obeah man that made him a substance that allowed for his people and him himself to have bullet immunity. Yeah, this by apparently when you drink this substance would not be penetrated by bullets. Which I mean, I don't know the veracity of that. I mean, if I thought that I wasn't going to be penetrated by bullets, then I might perform more confidently in a rebellion. And that's the reason why the rebellion was successful. Who knows? Who knows? But so far, most depictions of Obeah usage was malevolent and violent. But it wasn't until the 18th and the 19th century that we began to hear about doctresses such as Grace Dawn, who nursed her love, Simon Taylor, amongst other people in a cohort. Funny thing is, one of the practices of Obeah that this gal was using was hygiene.
Any practices that we was doing, they could be for healing, nurturing, could be for the good, for the light side of things. But we also use our practices to protect and to fight against the colonizers. And it was the colonizers, it was the ones that was trying to oppress us who demonized our practices because we were using them against them. The people that are on the opposite side of us, of course, they're going to see it as evil and demonic and malevolent. It's like saying, oh, well, don't fight back. Don't fight against what I'm trying to do to you. I'm trying to harm you, but don't fight back. Don't, just take it. It's basically what they're saying. It's basically what they want us to do and just let them do it. No, we wasn't going for that. We was not slaves. We was worn all over this world. We was worn because they was trying to oppress and destroy. And that is why they demonized our practices.
Hygiene, bathing, like these fellas were showering and they call that like witchery. That's madness. Hygiene and the usage of herbs were some of the main elements.
Hygiene is very important. It was simple. It's simple as that. Hygiene is a spiritual practice. It is, because we bathe, we shower, you have to cleanse. It's cleansing.
Of Obeah practices used that days. They call that like witchery. That's madness. Hygiene and the usage of herbs were some of the main elements of Obeah practices used that days, which were discovered long before the Europeans began to adopt that and use that to cure and heal soldiers and things. So the question is, if they're using this in modern medicine today, then why is there a dark stigma around Obeah? Like, I mean, it's literally called the dark arts. Here's why. In the Journal of a West India Proprietor, the author by the name of Matthew Lewis claimed that there was a palpable fear on behalf of the white colonizers and plantation owners that practitioners were skilled in the application of poison. A young woman by the name of Minetta was actually tried in court for attempting allegedly attempting to poison her master. Lewis and his company often depicted these women that apparently were trying to poison their masters as women possessed by Obeah men. These fears ultimately resulted in laws condemning Obeah. The Anti-Obeah Law of 1818 was passed in
They even made a law. Yo. They fear what we are. They fear who we are and what we're able to tap into. They strip us of doing these practices and doing the practices that we came from. They even made a law. They made an anti-law. And they probably got other laws that are, you know, against any other practices that we do. Shoot, the Bible tells you that. I don't want you to worship any gods before him.
1818 was passed in Barbados that specifically forbade the possession of any poison or any noxious or destructive substance. And almost half a century later, a Jamaican man was caught with white arsenic and of course was arrested for it. We saw many laws like this. I mean, even before that happened in Barbados, you had Taki's Rebellion, which spurred the first anti-Obeah law in Jamaica. But what really tipped things over the edge was when a comet appeared in the sky in, I think it was 19th century. The Mayal man saw this as a religious sign, and big man, it sparked a wave of spiritualism in Jamaica. The Mayal man postured themselves as the good guys, the good magicians, as opposed to the evil practitioners of Obeah. There were talks of Obeah men stealing the shadows of people and then making them pay to have them restored to them. You know, in fact, I've read that same concept as far as like the shadows being taken away from you. I've read that in Japanese models like Hirakami and whatnot, so that's weird. It goes to show superstition is just pretty much all over the world. But ultimately, there were laws passed that restricted the movements of both Mayal and Obeah practitioners. And the basis of these restrictions date back far beyond this. And this is truly why Obeah is so stigmatized in the Caribbean. Carl H. Manners published a paper in 2019 that discussed the suppression of the enslaved spiritual practice of Obeah. And who were the suppressors? Take a wild guess. What is amazing is that these slaves continued to practice Obeah under the violence from their colonial masters. So when the British found out that they couldn't beat the faith out of them, they basically used propaganda to change their minds and manipulate them into not doing Obeah. British writers claim that Obeah was an ignorant superstition, and
it's a conscious war. It was never a physical war. To begin with, it was always a conscious war, and it's still a conscious war. And if you can raise your level of consciousness past this physical existence, you will remember who you truly are. It's about raising consciousness, raising your vibrations, and tapping into the powers that you actually hold within yourself.
They use that to justify their subjugation. I mean, this goes in line with most of the rhetoric that European invaders used at the time anyway. They made big claims about African societies basically having a backwards behavior, backwards beliefs, and that they need Christianity in order to save them from the debasement and the state of affairs that they have in Africa. And ultimately,
y'all hear it. Y'all hear it, right? They used Christianity. They pushed Jesus Christ into our faces. They pushed us with their own belief system. They pushed us and indoctrinated us with their own beliefs. And Christianity didn't come about until slavery. Prisoners of war, until we were prisoners of war.
Christianity pretty much just ended up being a vehicle for colonization and bloodshed. But what was worse than that, big man, is that Caribbean people internalized this propaganda. We began to believe that our indigenous religions were evil, and that's why we stopped practicing them. This is the reason why you can't even say the word Obeah in my parents' house or my grandparents' house. This was an orchestrated attempt to erase Afro-Caribbean religions. Because what happens when someone erases your faith? They literally take away your hope. Faith is the underpinning of an oppressed people. It's what literally keeps them going. It's what gets Caribbean people through major hurricanes or indigent poverty. I mean, don't even take it from me. There's literally research that stipulates the poorer a country or society is, the higher the religiosity of that country. Faith was taken away. Thus, hope was taken away from the Caribbean people in order to make them more malleable. Because look at what happened when you had faith. You got Taki's rebellion. You get a Toussaint Louverture, who basically leads Saint Dominique, which is Hispaniola, into the first Black Republic. So make no mistake, I'm definitely not advocating for Obeah or Voodoo or pretty much any religion for that, matter. I am simply advocating for the thorough understanding of it, especially if it's your culture.
They don't follow any of the laws that they wrote up on. They don't follow any of the things that they talk about. It was all about trying to control the masses. In order to control the masses, you have to strip the masses, which is us, away from what we knew, because what we were tapping into holds immense power. We are powerful. They made us feel as though if we don't do what they say, we're deemed as lazy, we're deemed as crazy, we're deemed as all these different things. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. So if you want to see more conscious content from my channel, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss out. And as always, this channel is all about raising the level of consciousness and the level of our vibrations so that we can manipulate our own realities into the way that we want them to be. Also, go follow me on my TikTok and Instagram, True Ascension. I'm also on there as well. I'll see y'all later. Peace and abundance, peace and chaos.